Christians love to say that if there's no creator, then nothing matters. No meaning, no purpose, no morality, no reason to live. And just like that, they have cornered and trapped the atheist. Because if we are just here, if the universe just so happens to exist, if life eventually ends and there is no cosmic author writing this whole thing out, then what's the point? But here's the problem, and it's one that I don't think I've ever articulated, one that's kind of a new thought to me, and one that I'm very excited to share with you today, and so we're going to deeply cover it very quickly, and it's this. Their own God is in this exact same position, because Christians believe that their God has no creator. In fact, they downright brag about it. Their God is outside of space and time. There is no higher thing than him. He wasn't designed by someone else. He wasn't handed down a purpose. He wasn't given meaning from outside himself. And he wasn't created to fulfill someone else's plan. In the greatest cop-out that has ever maybe been made, they say that God just is, that he eternally exists. Without being made, without being assigned a role, without a creator above him telling him why he matters. And yet, hypocritically, Christians do not conclude, well, if God has no creator, then God's existence is meaningless. That would be consistent, but they will never say that. They can't. They do not say, if no one made God, then God has no purpose. They do not say, if God was not created for something specific, then God's life has no value. No. They say the opposite. They say that God is the most meaningful being in all of existence. They say that his existence matters infinitely. They say God's will matters, that God's thoughts matter, God's love matters, God's choices matter, God's creativity matters, God's relationships matter, and God's desires matter. But pause here. Where did God get those things? From a creator? No. From a higher authority? Again, no. According to Christianity, God's meaning comes from himself. God's purpose is self-grounded. God simply exists and experiences, values, loves, creates, chooses, all of it. And Christians think that that's enough. So here's the question. If that is good enough for God, why is it not good enough for us? Because that's so clearly the move that they refuse to notice. They say humans need an external creator to matter, but their God does not. They say humans need a purpose assigned from above, but their God does not. They say humans need meaning to be given to them by something greater, but again, God does not. I know I'm being a bit redundant, but I want to really drive this point home. God gets to simply exist and make meaning. Hey, that's kind of what I think about my life. But Christians hate when I say that. I am blasphemous. I am evil. I am stupid. I haven't thought it all the way through. I don't have a good grounding, just like their God. God gets to simply value things because they're valuable to him. What a novel concept. He chose to create and thought it was good. It made him happy. He supposedly even chose to love some people. Not all. Read your Bible. God gets to decide and care and act all on his own. And somehow that counts. And I know all the excuses that are going to come. Well, it's because God is better than us, higher than us, perfect, eternal, whatever. But that doesn't actually close the gap. That doesn't answer the difference at all. When we do the exact same thing, Christians call it empty. I could make the excuse that I'm so much greater, wiser, and longer lasting than an ant, but to the Christian, we are the exact same, despite our differences. So what makes God's difference so much more extreme that all of a sudden he supersedes all of this? Nothing does. When I answer that my family is what matters to me, they say, yeah, but will it matter cosmically? Who cares? When I say reducing suffering matters to me, they say, but who says? I do. When I say truth matters, they say, but without God? Why? Because I choose that it does to me. Because I see the value in it, because I've made an assessment based off my experience within my reality, and it makes sense. I get to choose that for myself, just like this God, who found himself in his own reality, different than my own for sure, but similar in the fact that he just was, just like I just am. When I say this life is all that matters, because it's the only one we know we have, they say, well, that's just subjective. But again, what is God's meaning, if not grounded in his own nature, will, and value? How is that different than me? How dare you compare yourself to God? I'm not. First of all, I don't believe that this God exists, and if he does, he's definitely not all the things that Christians claim that he is, according to his own supposed word. If there really was a God really on a higher plane, we can have a conversation, but again, it's still just going to be differences. That God, for whatever reason, in whatever way that Christians or the believers in that God cannot explain, just is, just like I believe I just am too. All these other qualifiers, again, cannot answer this dilemma. Christians will try to say something like, no, God's meaning is objective because God is objective. That doesn't solve it. That just gives God special permission to do exactly what they mock humans for doing. God values love, so love matters. God values worship, so worship matters. God values obedience, so obedience matters. God values glory, so glory matters. But why? Because God says so? Because God's nature says so? Because God cares about it? Fine, then we agree. Meaning can come from conscious beings who value, experience, care, and act. That's the point. The Christian cannot actually say that they believe meaning requires a creator. They are liars if they say that. They are beyond inconsistent because they don't apply it to the next level. It is special pleading like most of every other argument they make for their God. So the rule cannot be no creator, no meaning. The rule is God gets to be uncreated and meaningful, but I don't. That's not an argument. That's favoritism. You've admitted all the things your belief should not allow you to be able to admit or to exist. But that stupid law of non-contradiction really gets in the way. Because once that door is open, atheists are allowed to walk through it too. And again, if you want to go back to your excuses about God being perfect and God being eternal, and God even being the foundation for our reality, if you believe that, fine. But it still does not prove that meaning requires a creator. You have no case here. It only proves that Christians have a category for uncreated meaning, despite how many times I've been told the exact opposite. You already believe in uncreated meaning, you just reserve it for your God based off nothing. And it gets worse, by the way, because Christians love to double down when they're wrong. They say God created humanity for his glory. That's supposed to be our grand purpose, is bringing glory to God, biblically so. But think about what that means. God existed alone, needing nothing, lacking nothing, supposedly perfect and complete. If you need verses for all of that, see my last video. Then what did he do? He created a whole world filled with suffering, death, disease, fear, confusion, sin, judgment, hell, and endless religious conflict for himself, for his glory, for his will, for his pleasure, for his plan. And Christians have the audacity to call that the ultimate meaning. And either God is evil or he's inept. Those are really the only two options based off the omni-properties of God and the current condition of the world. Or option 3, he doesn't exist. But when I say, I create meaning for myself through love and art, truth, compassion, family, friendship, beauty, courage, and reducing suffering, Christians call that hollow? Really? It's almost funny if it's not the definition of absurdity. God making everything just for himself selfishly is profound, but humans making meaning for themselves and with each other is empty, is selfish, is disgusting, is sinful. God created worshipers for his glory. That's a sacred concept, but a parent actually loving their child without the need to be worshipped or glorified, without needing eternal reward, is meaningless because it doesn't exist forever. But God wanting praise forever is the definition of meaning. It's not just hypocritical, contradictory, stupid, or wrong. It's asinine. It's an offensive idea. Me wanting to leave the world a little better place than when I came into it, that's pointless against the backdrop of everything I just said. That's ridiculous. I don't buy that. Not for a single second. Face it, the human version looks better. It is better. God making everything to exist for himself in his own greatness is not morally impressive to me. It's cosmic narcissism. But I look around at finite beings that did not choose to exist, that wake up in the most dangerous universe. They realize that life is fragile, that they can't ever have all the answers, that they're not all powerful to change it or enact their will. They see how real suffering is. They see that death is coming. And still, often they choose to love each other. They choose to be courageous, to protect each other, to tell the truth, to not harm others, to make art and raise children and make love, to comfort the grieving and feed the hungry, to fight injustice and search for beauty. That's not meaningless. That's astonishing. It's truly like the most beautiful thing I can think of against all odds. And yet they persist, yet they endure. It's not less meaningful when we believe that all of that wasn't assigned to us by some commander creator. If anything, it makes it more meaningful. Of course it does. Obviously it does. How dishonest you have to be as a Christian to see the stark contrast there and say, yours is sin. What? And I'm not saying people are perfect. Of course they're not. But we're not perfect because great-great-great-great-grandma and grandpa ate a fruit they weren't supposed to from a talking snake. I can deal with the reality of what Christians would call evil in a world where we all just showed up. I can't deal with it from a perfect God with perfect love and a perfect plan that got away from him. No, what I see is that meaning and everything else, morality, purpose, justice, love, whatever you want, stems from awareness. And Christians already understand this when they talk about their God. That's what is so frustrating. They're so close. They just refuse to grant the same logic back to us. In Christian theology, God matters because of what God is, outside of anyone creating him, despite the fact that no one created him, because he is conscious, because he values, again, because he chooses, he creates, and he acts. Well, so do we. Not infinitely, not perfectly, and not eternally. But if that's all you got, you can keep it. We suffer, but we love. And we still think, and we still create. We lose, but we still hope. We really grieve. We really matter to each other. And that's enough. It doesn't have to last forever. I don't need any stamp from cosmic creator God of approval or purpose or meaning. I have the stamp of reality, of experience, of existence, of awareness. My life is real without a God, and real things do not need to be eternal to matter. The song that I love, that means so much to me, doesn't all of a sudden mean nothing just because it ends in 3.5 minutes. A meal matters even though it's eaten and consumed. A conversation matters even once the two people stop speaking. A childhood matters even though we grow up. A life matters even though it dies, and I would say especially because it dies. See this video. And Christians, you know this too. You cry at funerals. You treasure photographs. You're nostalgic. You save baby clothes. You celebrate anniversaries. You mourn pets. You keep letters. You visit graves. It's so obvious. How dishonest are you being with yourself if you've really convinced yourself under Christian talking points that nothing matters if it's not cosmically significant in an eternal manner? Don't be so willfully blind. You live as if temporary things matter each and every day of your life, I promise you. But then, once you're in apologetics mode, you pretend, aka you lie, that meaning has to be eternal or nothing. The greatest black and white fallacy of them all. And you call it wisdom. It's a silly, stupid trick. It's a rhetorical trap. It's designed to make finite life feel worthless just so religion can rescue it. But finite does not mean worthless. Uncreated does not mean meaningless. Unassigned does not mean purposeless. And if Christians can believe in a God that was never created, never assigned a purpose, never given meaning from above, and yet still matters infinitely, then they simply have no right to ever again tell us that nothing matters without a creator of our own. Their own theology already proves otherwise. So the next time someone says, if there is no creator, then nothing matters, the answer is simple. Then why does God matter? If it's good enough for your God, then how can you argue it's not good enough for us? Just a little bit of consistency is all I'm asking for. That's it. Thanks so much for being here. I just wanted to lay this out because I absolutely refuse to continue to play at all around the stealing of life that Christians continue to try to do on a daily basis from anyone that does not think like them. You do not control these things. Just because you claim something does not make it so. And too many of us are too aware of who we are, of our identity as an aware human being on this planet, in this universe, existing in this reality with no God required to ever again fall for the lies you need to tell to protect your belief. It's over. If my life is meaningless, your God is meaningless. If your God can have meaning in the way that he is described, then so can I. That's it. You can never again do this. And I hope that this really helps many of you that have been struggling after leaving your faith and being stuck in that in-between and hearing this relentless attack from believers. You are enough. Your life matters because you're here, because you feel, because you think. Don't let anyone take that away from you. Thank you to my top tiers of support, my Iconoclast, Ann, Boris, Chris, Greysteel, Gnarlywill, Grant, GVI, Jimmy, Joe, Kitboga, Matthew, Perry, and Shawn, my Humanist heroes, Chris, Craig, James, Jarrod, Kristi, my Atheist advocates, Aquitar, Caleb, Dakota, Dan, Drew, Jeff, Jeffrey, Jeremy, Jugs, Julie, Malcolm, Paul, Rega, Sparky, and Thomas, as well as all of my secular scholar patrons. If you enjoy Mindshift, would you consider joining these fine people? Thanks and have a great day.